All right, guys, so today we're going to do some mini bike stuff. Normally it's been side-by-sides and four-wheelers and stuff, but we do have these two Coleman mini bikes we got from Tractor Supply, and we've heavily modified them since the course of ownership. And today we got quite a bit of new updates on mine. I'm going to try and get it ready for our Hatfield trip next week. So, well, I guess we'll go over a couple things here. Just fresh things. So this had it had drum cable brakes in the back. So it was like a little 6-inch drum by like a bicycle brake cable up to the top, and that was it. That's all you had for brakes on this thing. So after I put the cam in it the first time about a year ago, I had it pegged going down the street, like 50 mile an hour, and I pulled that brake cable and it busted. And I can still remember the sound that the brake cable made, and it was not good. It was pretty sketchy. It went over the curb and into the yard. And I didn't lay it down, but so they sell a couple different kits here, mixed. So this is a wheel off of a MB200. I got that from studsracing.com. This is a brake caliper, come with a cable up to the master cylinder. And that lever, that's also off of a Trailmaster. That was from Go Power Sports. The brake disc, that was also off of an MB200. That was from Go Power Sports. So, the new wheel now allows the fact that you can put you see it in there? Yeah, so you can bolt the brake disc on, and you've done away with the drum wheel. So then from that point, you can get the caliper on here, and you set the caliper on the brake disc, and all that looks good. And then now you just need some way to bolt the caliper onto the frame. So Go Power Sports sells this bracket, which actually was a bracket from here to here down, and it come all the way over. And it's like a weld-on caliper bracket, so you could kind of put it on whatever way you want. I chose to, just kind of line it all up here, the rotor, fairly in line with the brake caliper. I put this bracket on, markered out what I wanted, cut it off with a cutoff wheel, ground some stuff off the frame, bolted all of it up, gave it a couple tacks, and it looks pretty good. You can see there's no space issues or anything between the bolts. I did get button head bolts, Allen bolts from Home Depot, just for a little more clearance. But yeah, brake caliper turned out good. And I did leave a little bit of room between the top of the rotor and the caliper. So there is, although that's there, I know you're going to lose your chain adjustment here. I'll just have to do the chain adjustment on the motor like most people would anyway, but I still do have a little bit of movement there. I can maybe do a 1/4 of an inch move. So yeah, brakes are pretty sweet, quite an upgrade. I didn't really do many videos on this before, so I guess we'll go over a couple things. This seat is normally down here with no rear suspension. I unbolted the seat and welded, a couple steel pucks here with bolts stood up. Same thing up here to a steel pan. And now, it's kind of like a Harley seat. I lost a bolt to the back of the seat here, but you kind of get the idea. Welded a hinge upside down to the front of the seat, so now it doesn't look like much, but it literally makes it going from riding a 20-minute ride and your spine hurts to you can go a couple hours and you're pretty good. So yeah, there's that. I got the bar risers on there, moose handlebars, thumb throttle, ODI, lock-on grips. Last ride I busted the foot peg off up here, laid it down in the woods trying to keep up with Derek, so I bought a big piece of all thread and I buffed the inside of the all thread, or the outside of the all thread, and ran it all the way to the end, welded it on. Same thing over here, one solid piece, and just welded up underneath the frame too. I don't really care about rust. It's kind of like a Mad Max look, and the bolt was zinc plated anyway, so whatever. But turned out pretty good. I moved the foot pegs back a little bit, angled them, so it was about a $5 fix. And then we'll move on to what I'm going to do here soon is put this motor back together. So when we got it, they had the stock, you know, whatever clone motors in them, which eventually, you know, we wasn't good enough. They go like 12 mile an hour, no torque, can't do anything. We also put big knobby tires on it. I still have a 50 tooth sprocket. Derek's got a 60 tooth sprocket, but so they're pretty slow from the factory. So eventually, like, you zip tie the spring, you know, to make the governor kind of release some. Eventually, try and disconnect the governor, and we put a Mikuni carburetor on there, some other things. So we got to the point where it wasn't still enough. So you can go to Harbor Freight and buy a Predator 212 for about 125 bucks. This one we bought. The other one we got for free from a buddy. So from that point, now you can take the cast iron flywheel and you can put on a billet flywheel. So you go from turning like no RPMs to turning, I don't know, 7,000 RPMs. That flywheel explodes inside your leg, and it's not good. So they sell this billet flywheel. It's lightened. I think it has a timing advance built into the key as well. So there's that. And then for safety, you take the junk cast rod and you put on the billet connecting rod. The cast rod does not have bearings. This has bearings that you can replace. We'll see. I don't know if you can see that, but see that little gouge there? I don't have a rod bearing, so we'll see what that does. It's the only spot on it, but yeah. So yeah, billet rod, billet flywheel, the governor is completely removed. I don't know if you can see in there, but normally there's a big wheel that comes in. There's an oil sensor over here, some more armature that comes in to run, you know, the governor that pulls the throttle back. I've deleted all that, retapped all the holes, bolted it, you know, siliconed it all in, so the governor is completely removed. It can free rev to whatever the valve springs allow it to. So on to the head. I don't think this round I'm going to do it, but I do have big valves, titanium push rods, billet retainers, and ratio rockers. So I've had those over there for about a year. I got them on sale quite a while ago. I don't think I'm going to do that this round. I'm just going to leave the head stock, but they do have 22-pound valve springs in there. You can't really see that, but obviously they're quite a bit different than stock. And they sell all kinds of different cams. I chose to go with a pretty moderate cam. It's called a Mod 2 cam. And all it does is, I don't know if you can see, but see how the top of the lobe of the cam is a little flatter? It's, you know, it's not quite like a full round out. You can see it on that one too. It changes the duration of the cam, so it doesn't add any extra lift, but it just changes the duration. So in my opinion, it does give a significant amount of torque. I feel like it does let it rev out a tiny bit different, but yeah. So everything else there stock. And I did have the stock Predator piston in there. We'll get over there and I'll put this thing up on the tripod after I hit the intro, but we're gonna put a flat top piston in it this time. The rings were bad. It was leaking, you know, leaking through, causing some smoke. So piston's like $19 through Go Power Sports for a flat top piston. So it's gonna increase the compression a little bit, already over the 10,000s head gasket versus the 50,000s head gasket. So I'll put a tripod up here and, you know, I might show putting this thing back together. So apparently this is a pretty simple process if you've done this a million times, like my dad, but I haven't, so I hate doing this every time. But so the way that this goes on is, as you can kind of see there, that expander ring, which is kind of like the web. So that gap lines up straight with the wrist pin. And then after that, you just stagger them. See that bottom gap is on the skirt. Next gap is on the skirt. Next gap is on the skirt. Next gap is on the skirt, just so they're all mismatched. That arrow goes down in the motor, so we'll go ahead and get this all lubed up, get the rod on, and get started. So I don't know how much that I'm gonna show of me fighting the piston in there for the last 10 minutes, but it's in there. I don't know if there's a better solution than the Harbor Freight piston ring compressor out of, like, I don't know, shrapnel sheet metal that looks like it could rip your hand off. Yeah, so anyway, it's kind of a pain in the butt, but I got it in there. Arrow down. You can see the rod orientation there. It's kind of like that. We're about to hook it up and move forward. So yeah. So these billet rods, other than the factory ones, actually have a forced oil lubrication. So the other one was just kind of a splasher as it goes around, but this one splashes in, actually force feeds oil back into the rod. So a much better design, even in addition to the billet part of it. So yeah. Okay, so now that we got all the rod bolts in, everything's all lubed up, we're going to torque it down. The end result is 170 inch-pounds, but they say you should work up to it by 20 inch-pound increments. I don't really know how critical that is, but we're going to start at like 120 and do it twice and then total it out to 170. So it was 120, welding 145. And then totaled out to 170. Okay. Get the camshaft all lubed up and then put it in there, show you where they line up. So, I don't know if you can see that there. There's a dot right there. And there's a dot right here on the cam. They both line up perfectly. Before we do that, we should probably put in the lifters. Okay. See, both dots line up perfectly. Okay, go ahead and get this side cover back on. Got a fresh gasket set from Go Power Sports. So side cover bolts are torqued to 17 foot-pounds or 204 inch-pounds. This goes up to 200, so it should be good. Okay, so the head bolts are also 204 inch-pounds. The irritating thing about every head gasket that you get from Go Power Sports is the fucking inserts to line up the cylinder heads there. There's one on the top and one on the bottom corner. Don't fit into the head gasket, so you've got to Dremel out the holes every single time, which is pretty sketchy. Especially since you just waited for a gasket set to come in the mail. I don't really understand why. If somebody wants to enlighten me why they would make you do that after paying money for the only thing that it fits to begin with, I don't know. Alright, so I already adjusted the valves. Pretty simple here. If you're this far, I would hope that you've adjusted valves before. So this is the adjuster nut, this is the jam nut, 14 millimeter, 10 millimeter. Exhaust. Other side is the carburetor, intake. So as the intake is all the way down, so as this valve is all the way open and then just starts to come back up. So when the intake is just about to start to close, adjust the exhaust. And then when the exhaust is just about to open, so when it's all the way up and just about to start to go down, then you can adjust the intake valve. So that's adjusting it on the base circle of the camshaft rather than messing with the compression release on the end of the camshaft to figure out if you're a TDC or not. So if you do this, it works every time. I already set it. They say set the range between 0 and 3 thousandths. I set it at 15 thousandths, both sides. All right, guys, it's the next morning here. I didn't videotape a lot of the finishing of the motor there, but it is done. It did turn out great. Took a little bit more work than I had anticipated. You know, as I had mentioned, I added these disc brakes on, which I had seen in another YouTube video, and the guy obviously cut a lot out of his how-to. So first of all, the wheel is wider than the stock disc or the stock drum brake wheel. So you have to stretch the frame a little bit, which I did with a jack. Don't mind my crooked fender. But what he didn't mention is chain clearance. See how the chain's good now? Well, it wasn't. And as you can see, I stacked 3 washers on the inside there to space it out. So once I got the chain clear of the frame, up front there, now the chain's all in line. But before, that motor was about an inch to the right in the stock spot. So I actually had to pull the motor out again. See the stock hole, stock slot to the left there is I drilled 4 new holes to mount the motor an inch to the left, which is all great. Everything lines up perfect, except I had already fixed my foot pegs to the stock width. So you see that side's great. Well, that's going to be kind of a pain in the butt to put my foot. So I wish that I had did that before. I would have widened them out quite a bit. So I don't know what's going to happen there. We'll see. But yeah, might do a little video of taking it for a test rip here. We'll see. It snowed overnight. Not really ideal mini bike conditions. So yeah, 22-pound valve springs, billet flywheel, billet rod, flat top piston, Mikuni carburetor, full exhaust, disc brakes. If the fact that it's a Predator 212 to begin with. So yeah, this thing runs pretty good.